All right, hey, listen, y'all grab a seat. Grab a seat. We got to hit the ground running because we've only got 15 minutes, and that joke took way too long, okay? So here we go. All right, so in this workshop, we're going to talk about resolving conflicts, and I want to say from the start that we're talking about interpersonal stuff, okay? So I'm not talking about really abuse or anything that would be like considered a crime or a serious offense. That's not what we're dealing with. We're talking about more within a relationship when there's been something said or done that there's some offense taken that needs to be dealt with in a biblical manner, okay? So I want to say that when you find yourself in conflict, some good things to remember as we start this, okay? One is that Proverbs 28:26, he who trusts in his own heart is a fool, but he who walks wisely will be delivered, okay? So I want from the outset that we should always have this perspective that I might be wrong here. I can't trust my own perspective on the issue, that we need to remember what Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 17:9, that our hearts are deceitful and desperately wicked. That we need to be honest with ourselves that we might be more at fault than we'd like to think. That's always a good starting point, okay? That we need to remember that we have a natural bent in our flesh to blame other people for our problems. We have a natural bent for that, right? See Adam and Eve, right? Our first parents started this, right? When they fell, and then right away, man, Adam blames Eve, Eve blames the serpent. You know, they're shifting that blame. We have a bent in doing that. We need to remember that it's more important to honor the Lord and to love our neighbor than to be right. It's more important to honor the Lord and to love our neighbor than to be right. That's to be right with pride and bitterness and resentment that causes divisions, okay? So let's go to number one. We're going to go back to examine our hearts before the Lord. When there's conflict, we need to examine our own hearts before the Lord. Matthew 7:1-5. Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounced, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but you do not notice the log that's in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. All right, so Jesus gives us this kind of funny illustration, right? But the point is, no, we've got to look at ourselves first. You have to examine your own heart, look at your own motives, replay in your mind not just what you said, but how you said it, how you responded, how you treated somebody before you're ready to really go and confront somebody else. Examine your attitude. Have you had a critical, negative, or overly sensitive attitude that has led to unnecessary conflict? Have you been critical, negative, or overly sensitive that's led to the conflict? Examine your words and actions. Have your sinful words and actions contributed to the conflict? Because you are often blind to your own sins, you may need a friend who will help you take a look at yourself and see how you maybe have contributed. Proverbs 13:10 says, pride leads to conflict. Pride leads to conflict. Those who take advice are wise. So it's super helpful that when there's conflict, it's also our bent in our flesh to go tell people, but we tell people in order to get them on our side. It's like when there's an issue, we go tell other people so that the other person looks like they're in the wrong. And we paint the picture for people that we want them to see, and that's not helpful. That's prideful. What we need to do, though, is to tell other people in order to make sure that we're seeing it correctly. It looks more like, hey, man, here's what happened. Here's what I said. Am I in the wrong here? Could I have handled that differently? That's getting somebody to help you, to give you advice rather than trying to get them on your side. All right, so number two. So first, you got to look at yourself, and if you need help, get somebody else to speak truth to you. Number two, determine if it's really worth confronting. You got to determine if it's really worth confronting. Psalms 19:11, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it's his glory to overlook an offense. There's some offenses that they're not worth confronting. Oftentimes it means you just give the person the benefit of the doubt that maybe you took offense because you misinterpreted it. And just, you got to let it go. As a general rule, an offense should be overlooked if you can answer no to the following questions. Is the offense clear disobedience to God? Is it clear disobedience to God? Will it permanently damage the relationship? Is it seriously hurting other people? Is it seriously hurting the offender himself? If you can answer no to those questions, or questions like those, man, let it go. Let it go. I'm not going to sing, but let it go, right? It's not worth it, man. And there's a place here where he's saying, man, it's your glory. It's a glorious thing to be able to go, you know what? Man, I'm gonna extend grace to this person right now. Because if the Lord hit me over the head for everything I do that was stupid, right? I'd never get back up. If you answer yes to any of these questions, an offense is too serious to overlook, in which case God commands you to go and talk with the offender privately and lovingly about the situation. As you do so, you need to remember some things, okay? So if it's too big of a deal, yes, it needs to be confronted. I've examined my heart. I've prayed about it. I've gotten some counsel. We need to confront this. Okay, well, then you need to do that biblically. And the Bible tells us, man, Jesus gives us a pattern of how we confront other people. So the first thing we need to remember is to pray for humility and wisdom. You need to bathe this conversation in prayer, because confronting the other person, dealing with the conflict, we always need to have reconciliation as the goal. The goal is not to put the person in their place. The goal is not to show everybody that I was right and they were wrong. The goal is not to beat the other person down. The goal needs to be restored fellowship and reconciliation and purity before the Lord. So pray for humility and wisdom. Plan your words carefully. Plan your words carefully. And what's helpful here is think about how you would like to be confronted. Put yourself in the other person's position, because you'll probably find yourself there at some point in life, and think about, okay, if I've messed up it, or if I did the thing that this person did, how would I like to be confronted? How would I best receive confrontation? And think through that, man. It'll soften your words. Anticipate likely reactions and plan appropriate responses. Read that again. Anticipate likely reactions and plan appropriate responses. It's important. Is think through, especially if you know the person well, how they might respond, and be prepared for that. And so I'll tell you one quick story. There was a guy in my church who was in the process of, he wasn't a member of our church, but he attended our church regular, and he wasn't going anywhere else. And he was in the process of divorcing his wife, and he had moved in with somebody. And that had to be confronted. That's not something you can overlook. It needed to be dealt with as a brother in Christ. And so I went to him, but I knew him well enough to know this. He's going to deflect. He's going to bring up my sin. He's going to bring up other people's sin in the church and ask me why I'm talking to him about his and not dealing with all these other things. And so I went into that conversation. I determined I'm not playing the game. I'm not going to chase him down all those rabbit trails. I'm going to let it go. When he brings up my sin, I'm going to let it go. When he brings up other people's sin, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to stay on task. I came here to talk about one thing, and that was what was going on in his life. And so I was able to. I stayed on task, and I didn't chase him down those other directions, and we were able to deal with what was really going on. So plan or anticipate reactions. Choose the right time and place. All right, so we said go privately, right? That's the Lord's command. First go and talk to that person. But choose the right time and place. Probably private doesn't mean secluded. It'd probably be good to have this in a public place, but privately. And here's what I need you to hear. If it's worth confronting, then have the conversation in person. You know what I'm getting at? Don't have this conversation via text. I need y'all to say, yes, Rob. Yes, Rob. Thank you. Don't do it. Do it face to face where you leave less to their interpretation of what you're saying or how you're saying it or what you really mean, okay? Assume the best about the other person until you have facts to prove otherwise, right? We call this the benefit of the doubt. The whole way, give them the benefit of the doubt until it's just crystal clear. Nope, this is what's really going on. Listen carefully. Listen carefully. Be prepared to listen, man. Give them an opportunity to explain where they're coming from. Ask for feedback. When you confront them on something, say, man, you tracking with me? Does this make sense? Well, what are you thinking here? Am I reading you right? Remember that only God can change somebody's heart. Okay? Number 3, take responsibility for yourself. Own what's yours to own. Probably in this conversation, something's going to come up that you can go, you know, right? You know what? You're right. I messed up there. Very rarely will it be that the other person is 100% in the wrong and you've been a perfect little angel, right? Chances are you've done something that contributed to it, and own it. Own what's yours to own. Admit what you did that was wrong. Apologize for how your choice and actions affected the other person. Unqualified, this is huge, life lesson coming at you right here. Unqualified apologies are the only real apologies. You know what I'm talking about? Here's what I mean. It is not a real apology if you say, yeah, man, I'm sorry I said that, but don't tag a but on the end of it. Leave it alone. If you can have something to either don't say sorry or say it and leave it there. Because here's what comes across if you say it that way. Man, I'm sorry I said that to you, but I wouldn't have if you weren't such a jerk. Is that an apology? No. Is that an exaggeration? Yes. But that's how it comes across. That's how it comes across. If you tag a but on there and you put the blame back on them, you're just going to incite more conflict, okay? So if there's something to be apologized for it and leave it there. In fact, apologize for it and ask for forgiveness. Say, man, I'm sorry, and then take it a step further and say, will you forgive me for that? Accept the consequences of your actions. Know that there might be consequences for it. If you've really done something to offend somebody, put yourself on the other side, right? If you've really done something to offend somebody, you've done something wrong, you can ask for forgiveness, but you don't have the right to demand what their forgiveness of you looks like, okay? There's going to be some times where you hurt somebody, and you can't just tell them, hey, man, I asked for forgiveness. You need to get over it and move on. You might need to give them time for their emotions to catch up to the fact that, yeah, they're trying to forgive you. You can't demand what it's going to look like moving forward, okay? Accept the consequences. Number 4, so if you go and you confront them one-on-one and you're trying to deal with it and it's still unresolved, then we're going to follow the Lord's instruction and say, okay, I need to bring somebody else into this. I need to bring somebody else into it to talk with both of us to kind of mediate the conversation, all right? And again, this isn't somebody that you're going to just get on your side. It would be really helpful if it's somebody that you both trust and you both respect, that cares about both of you and wants, and again, they have the goal of reconciliation. All right. Reconciliation is always the goal. Let's go to number 5. We're running out of time. Think before you speak. Think before you speak. This is important, always. So in my house, man, we have a plaque on our wall. I think it was Pastor Doug Wilson I heard say this first. But we try to live by this. Before you say something, think, is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? If you can kind of have that as a filter on your brain before words leave your mouth, it'll help a lot in the middle of a confrontation, but it'll also keep you out of a lot of confrontations. And I do have another one, because I also allow for, is it funny? Because if it's funny, well, that's all right. We can forgive it. So, Proverbs 3:3, Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and man. Both kindness and truth are important, and the two go together. Okay? Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, building somebody up according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear. All right, so say this. Those are all good principles to follow, to kind of get down in your life for handling relationships, period, but especially confrontations. I want to say this to you. If you find yourself in a lot of drama, if you're constantly finding yourself in conflict, who is the common denominator? Not rhetorical. Who's the common denominator? Not me. You. Gotcha. Yeah, you. You need to take an honest look at your life. Like, if you find yourself, I love that joke, I can't help it. If you find yourself in a lot of drama, it might be you. And so that might mean that you need to take a hard look at a lot of these steps that we just walked through and really examine your own heart. How you're having conversations. Are you gossiping? Are you slandering? Are you always attacking other people? Are you offending people? And if so, man, you need major heart change. All right, so real quick, and I got to be done. Last point, look to Jesus. Look to Jesus. Pursue Christ-like humility. Demonstrate Christ-like love. Show Christ-like forgiveness. Philippians 2, 1 Corinthians 13, Colossians 3, are those up there? Yeah, so you can write those down. I'm out of time, but if you do that, Christ-like humility, Christ-like love, Christ-like forgiveness, not only will you handle conflict well, but you won't find yourself in very much of it. All right, love you guys. You got 10 minutes till the next breakout, 10 minutes.